Welcome to the podcast. We have on a living legend in the screenwriting world, storytelling world. We have on the author of The Writer's Journey, Chris Vogler. Chris, thanks for being on.
It's a great pleasure. Always glad to be with you guys.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, your book is groundbreaking on the way that it is able to analyze the monomyth and the hero's journey. Before we really get into that stuff, can you give us a little bit of your origin story, your major influences?
Yeah, sure. I love talking about that because I think it's important for everybody in the creative area to have their feet pretty firmly in their childhood and their origins. And as you said, their origin story. I think that's part of branding yourself today, is creating a kind of a legend about how you came to be or how you found your business model, whatever it is.
Right.
I grew up in the suburbs of St. Louis until I was about 11, and then my dad bought a farm and we moved out west of St. Louis. And so part of the time I grew up in this idyllic sort of Mark Twain, Huckleberry Finn universe on the farm, but I had the urge to get myself into the movies somehow. I would just watch things on TV or go to the drive-ins and just want to tear the screen open and dive in there. I just knew it was so exciting to me. I had to be part of it. And I observed even as a little kid that it was physiological, it was physical. I felt things in my body. Certain scenes, certain music really rocked me, and that made me want to figure this out. You know, why are certain scenes in movies, certain forms in music so triggering to these wonderful sensations? Some of them are, you know, horror and terror and your skin falling and things like that. But some of them are laughing and, you know, feeling a chill, especially these chills that would run down my back or down my arm when the movie sort of cut through to some truth, or there was something beautiful and just perfect and appropriate about a scene. You just get the shivers. And that was a real line that I was pulling on to try and figure stuff out. And as a kid, I used to listen to music and on my old record player and conduct everything. But the things that really moved me in this physical way were compositions that had in them sort of death and rebirth. You know, there would be a climax, there would be a huge crescendo, maybe everything would be expressing some kind of conflict, great struggle, like Beethoven's symphonies do. And you know, I would act all this stuff out, and I would die 1,000 deaths and then come back to life again in the next movement, you know, and that stuff really got me excited. So I was following a trail, and then I went to journalism school at the University of Missouri, did a little bit of film work there. There wasn't any formal film class, but I took film appreciation, side studies and so forth, and then went into the Air Force and was lucky. They threw me in the middle of the Vietnam War. They threw me out to Los Angeles to make documentary films about the space program.
Wow.
So I dodged the bullet, literally, of service in Vietnam, but as an Air Force officer, I got training and this opportunity to make films. And then after that, on the GI Bill, I went to film school at USC. And I was always looking for, okay, what's the code? Where's the book? Where's the algorithm, we would say today, for cracking stories? I just sensed there had to be something. And it sort of fell in my lap when a professor told me, okay, you like this mythological stuff. You've mentioned it a couple of times commenting on films. So why don't you go check out The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell? And I'd never heard of this before. But it happened to be within the same week that the first Star Wars movie came out.
Oh, really?
And George Lucas had been to the same film school, USC school, 10 years before me. And he nicely invited the whole class and the faculty to come and see this new movie of his. And we all thought he was nuts. Nobody's making science fiction at that time.
Right.
It seemed like such a throwback to these old dusty black and white serials. But of course, everybody was, blown away by it, speechless at the end when the lights came back up. But I had a little different experience, not just seeing my future and the way movies are made being changed, but seeing Campbell's outline of the hero's journey tick, 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 exactly played out by Lucas, and then later found that, Lucas had read his Joseph Campbell and met.
Yeah,
Joseph
and literally, I mean, even like the cave scene is really represented in that story. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really a direct application. And it was kind of breathtaking to me, also a little bit annoying, because I thought I had figured out how to harness this thing, and I was going to make all kinds of, I had a plan to do a Jurassic Park type movie before Jurassic Park existed. I was going to do a time travel dinosaur with the same triangular structure of the professor and a couple of kids, or several people going through the adventure together. So I was just a little behind the curve of figuring these things out. But it led me into working for the studios as a reader. And I got the great laboratory to test this stuff out with, because I sensed it was valuable and applicable to modern storytelling, not just to classical myths and fairy tales and so forth,
right,
but for everything, romantic comedies, adventure, horror, you name it, it sort of fit and it worked. And I wrote a paper about it, explaining why Star Wars was this runaway hit. No one could understand it in Hollywood. They thought,
really,
this is a fluke. And they were puzzled, by why people came back with this sort of religious fervor. So I tried to explain that. And then started working for the studios. And after a stint at 20th Century Fox, I moved over to Disney. And they had a great culture there of writing memos to communicate new ideas and to persuade people. The great memo writer was Jeffrey Katzenberg, who went on to do DreamWorks and was a powerful force right then, making The Lion King and Little Mermaid and so forth. And I came in and wrote this Campbell idea into a 7-page memo. And that was sort of the spark or the beginning of this viral event, where it whipped around thanks to fax machines and Xerox machines all over Hollywood. Within a few weeks, this was the hot memo, and it really got into the consciousness of Hollywood as a useful tool that could be used in all the genres. So then I developed that and eventually, started teaching at UCLA Extension, which has a great program for media studies and professional training and so forth. And I used my students as guinea pigs and eventually
Of course. Yeah.
So I expanded it until it was big enough to be a book. And it was a long road to get it published, but eventually found an open-minded publisher. And it's stayed in print ever since. So it's been in print for 25 or almost 27 years now.
Wow.
And just hung in there, and we were surprised. We didn't think it would do that quite that well. We thought we might sell a few thousand books to this few screenwriters in the world, but it turned out to have much, much wider application, not just to screenwriting, novel writing, but to
of course,
a lot of other things.
It makes the hero's journey, it makes the monomyth accessible. I mean, you write it in a way. I mean, I've torn through your book a few times, and every time you sit down and read it, it takes like a master class, but makes it so that you can understand it. And you have all the beautiful like archetypes in there and everything that really like breaks down the myth of the hero's journey in a way that anybody can understand it. They just have to sit down and enjoy your book. And so I am not surprised that it's taught in colleges, that it has taken the process of storytelling and especially screenwriting to a new level, and allows for that visceral experience that you're discussing about when you're as a kid and you're watching a film in a drive-in. I mean, a good film with powerful characters will pull you into a moment, right? You'll be in your body and you'll be experiencing that emotionally, as you said, in different parts of your body. And your book allows for a writer who doesn't know how to do that to finally follow that path. And I think it's absolutely, what a wonderful contribution you've done for our craft.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. That's great. I tried to make it like these memos, and Katzenberg had a wonderful way of outlining things and giving you a topic sentence and telling you where he was going in the memo, right, and so forth. So I made use of that. But some of the sort of intention to make it accessible and useful came out of my Air Force experience.
Really?
When I was making films for the Pentagon and so forth, one of the old timers pulled me aside and he said, "Lieutenant, you have to make the script so even the general can understand."
That's awesome. Oh, I love that. So I
learned to dumb it down, not dumb it down, but to make it accessible.
Exactly. Yeah. No, there's a difference there. It's not that at all. I've written a screenwriting book, and so what the struggle is to really, how do I take this really esoteric idea and make it so that anybody can be able to understand this. Did you feel like at any moment while you were writing this, because I've experienced this, so I'm curious, for a master like yourself, did you ever feel like the book was writing itself?
Well, to a certain extent that was true, because I don't know the technical name for it, but when you're writing an academic paper, let's say about chemistry, there is a way to organize the paper which maybe follows the model of the thing you're looking at. So that if you're looking at a structure, a chemical structure, maybe you use that for the structure of your paper. And so right. I had the structure of the hero's journey. And so I more or less simply followed that, and then introduced the archetypes as 8 characters or functions or types.
Yeah.
And, supplemented that basic 12-step outline that I had derived from Campbell. My model is a little different. I was shaping it to fit movies, and Campbell was not thinking about films primarily or at all when he wrote his book. He was aiming at a pop psychology thing. He was a popularizer, as I am, but he was, trying to address sort of social problems and psychological problems of his time, but not thinking about movies. So I adapted a little bit. But there were times when I look back at it now and read it, and I see the things flowing and ideas coming. Certainly some of it is a huge struggle. There's no question about that. The problem I had, maybe you identify with this, is a lot of it is what sequence do you tell it in?
That's a good point.
Things need to be put in a certain order of, okay, here's a basic idea, then we're going to build on that, we're going to add a piece, and then we're going to amplify that. There are all these operations, and you can get all tangled up in wanting to tell this and tell that, and everything wants to be first. Everything claims to be the most important. So that's a struggle.
And you don't want to overwhelm the reader. You don't want it to be dry. You don't want it to be textbooky. So you have to really kind of parse it out in a way that's easily digestible. And Writer's Journey does that. I mean, you can open it up and go to any section you want and really learn something key about what you're missing in your script. And that's what's important. You don't have to read it cover to cover. You can keep it next to your desk, pull it up. Okay, I want to look at what kind of archetype template can I use for this character? Okay, he's the shadow. And then I go from there and I use that. I mean, it's brilliant.
Well, it's that was sort of intentional. I wanted it to be that kind of random access thing where you can read it in sequence and you'll get a certain picture,
Yeah.
but you can also just dive in any place. And it's not unlike mythology that way, because
Hmm.
mythology is a long tail and it has a beginning, middle, and end, but you can jump in anywhere
Yeah.
and just pick up a thread and start pulling on that thread, and that will lead you to all kinds of interesting associations and insights. So
Exactly.
that's my hope.
So your book is impressively 27 years going on its run. Have you put anything new? I mean, because we grow as people, right? We grow as writers. I mean, you're obviously a master of this craft, but I have a feeling that you keep growing yourself and keep becoming better at what you do. So, is there any kind of new insights that you've brought to the 25th edition, anniversary edition of this book?
Yes, what was kind of new and daring in a way, because I'm always trying to dare myself and challenge myself a little bit as a test of character, and to find out
Yeah.
what I know or what I don't know. That's what Stephen King said about writing: is you don't know what you know until you write about it, and that's certainly been true. So I just tried to bring out this stuff in as logical a way as I could, but the new stuff is about the chakra system. And
Okay. Interesting.
I was sort of daring here because there's kind of a fence around screenwriting that it's a technical thing, and it's a blueprint, and they use some terms that almost make it sound like an engineering diagram. But there is this thing going on in the body all the time. And I noticed when I was a little higher up in the chain in Hollywood and working as an executive and going to the weekly meetings, the job was to read scripts over the weekend and then come in and either shoot them down out of the sky by criticism or hold them up and say, no, this is good. We should make this movie, and try to convince the other members of the meeting that they should back it up. And you need about 3 people saying yes before, and one of them has to be the boss, but you need about 3 people plus the boss saying yes before something goes forward. And I noticed that other people were responding to the scripts in almost a numerical way. They talked about the demographics and what slice of the market and what likely first weekend opening you would get with this kind of movie. And all I was doing was pointing at my body at the certain centers.
Really?
I'd say, it got me here, it choked me up, and it really twisted in my guts. Or I felt my heart pounding near the end, and then I started to tear up. I was just pointing at the chakras,
That's
at these
amazing.
centers up and down my body. And I studied meditation and done some yoga and looked into these things a little bit and recognized, oh yeah, I'm pointing at the chakras. So maybe there's something here for writers.
Right.
That my basic concept was that the chakras are your targets. As a writer, you are aiming to create a scene that reaches out off the page, off the screen, and actually somehow activates these different centers up and down the spine, so that these nerve centers and organs are stimulated, and so it causes tear ducts to rain down tears. It causes glands in the throat to choke, to literally tighten up and choke up. It causes the heart to pound faster. I mean, it's all emotional things on the screen and on the page causing physical reactions in the body.
That's beautiful.
So I wanted to explore that. So that's the new thing in the book.
That's very interesting, and it's insightful as well. My wife is actually a massage therapist, so she has to do with a lot of chakras and energy work and stuff like that. So I think that's fascinating. And yeah, you can watch a scene and feel like you got punched in the gut. And so I find that fascinating, and it's very different from what I've seen the industry going. The industry right now, they're relying more on artificial intelligence to analyze screenplays and see where things are going. So it's really nice to see like a new approach as well. Like, but what are they emotionally, physically feeling when they read your script? And now I want to pay more attention when I'm reading a script and saying, okay, where am I feeling this? So that's really cool.
Yes, yes. You hope to light up these centers. And one thing I observed was that in the good scripts, there would be, as I've said, at least two of these things operating at once.
Yeah.
And I think it makes a circuit that if you're tight in your guts over suspense and you're emotionally involved and sorry for the person at the same time, that creates a kind of tension or circuitry
Right.
that it really draws the audience in. And I know what you're saying. It's come year after year. As I work for the studios, I would see guys march into the executive offices with a spreadsheet or a computer program or something they were displaying that said, this is the answer. You don't need readers anymore.
Yeah.
You don't need to even ask the audience. We just will tell you, you need this to happen on page 27 and a half, and down at the bottom of page 33 this has to happen, and I don't buy that as an application of my own work,
right,
as a way of using other people's books and systems. It just isn't that. I mean, we're human, so it isn't that mechanical.
Yeah, no, I mean, I use a reference guide, so like you have where all these different things can fall, but in the end, it is going to be up to you. You have to feel where it's going to be, and it's you have to know the rules to break the rules. That's my own little thing. But
yeah.
with the hero's journey, and you were an executive. I mean, you're taking weekly meetings. So with the hero's journey, I mean, what were you doing in the film business? Were you coming on to films and helping tweak scripts, or write them with your system?
Well, yes, that evolved. In the beginning, I worked for years as in the routine reader job, which is almost on a doggy-door basis, where they slide the script through a slot and you read it in your office or at home, and then you slide it back again with some notes and a short, synopsis of the thing and some recommendations on whether they should make it or not and what's good and what's bad about it. But eventually they started handing over a lot of responsibility to the readers or story analysts, and to do notes on projects that were approaching production. So writing development notes, they were called, became this second art form beyond just reading the script and giving an evaluation. Now it's like, it's all on your hands. We're shooting, they told me one time, we're shooting this thing on Monday and this is on Friday. So, can you get us some ideas? Tell us how to save this dog by Monday.
I've actually been there. I get it.
Yeah, it's real. That sometimes they are intoxicated by the pitch or something,
right?
And they go ahead and they invest in it, and then they realize we don't have a script or a story,
there's nothing there,
a theme or a tone or anything. And so sometimes it would be that kind of emergency technician work. So I enjoyed that, and I was good at it, at analyzing stuff. It also paralleled with work in the legal departments of the studios, where they would hand you two scripts. One, say, was by somebody who says, you stole my idea for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids or whatever.
Okay.
And, you'd have to compare the Disney version versus the challenging version. And
that sounds like a nightmare.
That
sounds awful.
It's not for everyone. It's a certain kind of analysis where you're going, in A, the character does this and this. In B, the character does that and that, and they aren't.
Like a spreadsheet of
that's
commonalities.
I did tons of that, but I enjoyed this process of working more directly with the writers and the directors. And as I got a little deeper into it in this executive thing, I could do things like I just get an idea and I'd walk across the lot to the production office and I'd say, we should have a dog in this movie. And they'd go out and hire a dog,
That's awesome.
because they would go, he's right. We can't argue with that. There should be a dog in this scene. And, I have my little stack of victories like that. There,
can you give me one? Can I get one from you?
Well, sure. There's a couple of them in the Disney works. In The Lion King, there are several things like that. The one I guess proudest of is in the opening Circle of Life. The sort of shaman baboon character, Rafiki, raises up the baby and shows everybody. And there was a climax in the music, and there were beautiful clouds and light and everything all around. But I said, and this was already after they had animated that sequence completely. I came in and I looked at it and said, it would be great if, I know it's late, but it would be great if a shaft of light came out of the cloud and lit up the baby.
That's awesome.
And by my, body reaction thing, I could see that everybody in the room, was reacting physically. All these animators sat there with their pad on their knee and their pencil, and they draw everything. They draw whatever's in front of them, their own foot, their knee, the back of the head, the person in front of them. They're constantly drawing. So, they just could not deny the physicality of it, that would be so great, and it would just go right on the music where the climax bursts open. It was just appropriate. So they stopped production and they went back at the cost of thousands and thousands of dollars, went back and added the beam of light. So that's one for my record books.
There you go. Next time we're watching The Lion King, we'll see that moment and be like, Chris Vogler did that.
Yeah, I just want the royalties. Just give me whatever percentage of the length of the film,
That's exactly.
the profits of the film. I'll take that.
Everybody watch The Lion King as soon as you finish listening to this episode. So actually, you mentioned something earlier. You mentioned the tone of a script. I'm actually excited about the fact that you mentioned that, because I mention a tone of a script when I'm reading a script, and the tone is this. I don't see a lot of people ever talk about that. They'll mention genre. They'll mention, this and that. But I feel there's an inherent tone of what a character or what a script is going for.
Yes, sometimes it's announced in the script. I think it's a good practice, actually, to give me some indication early on. And some people do it just without thinking. It falls out of their sleeves. And on the first page, this is dry and witty, and sardonic and clever, or it's going to be brutal or scary or whatever. Some do that effortlessly, but sometimes I think it's okay to give me a little sketch of that. Like, don't take anything in this script seriously. I like it when they announce things like that in the descriptions.
That's good. See, that's a great tidbit to know. It's okay to kind of clue in the reader so they understand what eye to look at it through. Now, you just gave us a great story, but do you have any kind of weird jobs that you've done throughout the years as an expert on story?
Well, I have a couple where I got to role play a little bit, and I really enjoyed that. One was when I was at Fox. We were doing a spy thriller. It never got made there, but it was a real life story about a guy named Aldrich Ames, who sold out the CIA and caused the deaths of many agents. We had several directors looking at it and writers working on it. And one of the executives said, "Why don't you do a briefing paper for the new directors and writers, so they kind of know the background, and it's a very complicated story. So why don't you just give them a cheat sheet or something?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to role play here." And so I wrote it up as a CIA dossier on the guy and his wife. And put on the top secret, do not distribute, and made it as much like an internal CIA memo as I could. And I analyzed the guy and said, he's either the most clever spy in the world, he's a real life James Bond, or he's an inept boob.
Yeah.
Because the FBI and CIA would trail him in his car and he would always lose them. And they couldn't figure out, is he doing that by clever spycraft, or is he just a horrible driver and confused? And everything he did was like that, you know, where you could look at it and you say, that's completely foolish and foolhardy and risky, but it's brilliant on if you look at it another way.
Right.
So that was a wonderful role-playing exercise. And the other one was similar for Warner Brothers at a point, this is many years ago, when they had done a couple of the Superman, they had done the first set of Superman movies.
Okay.
And we're looking at, okay, how do we reboot this and bring it forward? And they brought me in and just said, tell us about Superman. Give us your take on Superman. And I went down the same road. I pretended I was the Superman Technical Institute. And I wrote a report in which I said, Superman was nice enough to come in and work with us for a week.
That's fun.
You know, he had to leave a few times to save some people, but he came back and he ran through all his tests. He flew for us. He looked through walls, and this is our report on how he does it and what our theories are about how this is done. And I just had a ball with that. It was so much fun to put myself in that space. And some of the speculative stuff I came up with turned out in the movies later. They used these ideas.
Oh, that is so cool.
And also physics itself caught up with my speculation and started going, you know, we could actually make spacecraft travel by doing this technique. My idea was that he flies by creating a kind of a vacuum in front of him.
Right.
He creates a void, and it's not that he's flying, he's sucked towards this. And he just creates a continuous
that's how they think UFOs fly.
Yeah. So it
awesome.
turns out that now the physicists are going, yeah, actually, that's not a bad idea. We might be able to make something out of that.
You're an accidental futurist.
Yeah.
That's
yeah, that it overlaps. But I am on both ends of the scale. I'm looking back to the earliest cave paintings, and I'm also projecting ahead.
That's amazing. So, I mean, you've worked with a lot of people. Do you have any favorites that you've collaborated with, or any of your favorite projects you worked on? I mean, it sounds like The Lion King meant a lot to you.
Yes, that was sort of my high watermark of influence there. The door was open. Because I had written a letter to Mr. Katzenberg and said, you know, I've been working for the company for a while and I want to get more involved. I want to get more deeply into it. And he sent me to work with animation at the time they were developing Lion King. So they already knew about me because this memo I had written had preceded me. And when I walked into animation, I thought, well, I'm going to have to sell them on my idea. But I walked in the door, and in the lobby, there was a corkboard with cards on it. And they had outlined The Lion King by my hero's journey method. Step one, called,
That's cool.
Word of your world. Step two, call to adventure. Step three,
Yep.
the call. They had done the whole 12 stages. And so they already had processed Lion King through that lens. So it wasn't a heavy sales job, and they were just open. And, you know, it ended up being a great collaboration. So that's one for me. Just a little thing I enjoyed for myself was I was invited by a German producer to write the script for a children's animated thing called Jester Till, about the class clown of Europe in the 1300s, a guy named Till Eulenspiegel. And this was apparently a real person, but he was irreverent, and a guy like Borat, who would go around making fun of everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, is beloved in all the European countries. So that was a great blast for me to, have the total control.
Yeah.
It wasn't very collaborative. It was pretty much up to me to write the script and even one of the songs. So
Wow.
I got pretty deep into that experience. So I'm glad I went, at least once down the road of sort of shepherding my own project all the way through. But I've worked with some people who are sort of believers in the hero's journey, who read my book and then came to me.
Yeah.
One was Darren Aronofsky, who has,
oh wow, fantastic filmmaker.
He's just an amazing, unusual, unique talent.
Yeah.
And he's so avant-garde, and you look at his movies and you say he must be just channeling this, and there's no particular pattern, but he is actually very faithful to the hero's journey and the archetypes, and he uses my book and my outline on just about every project to test it out.
He's a visionary. There's no question.
Yeah.
So you had sparked a question in me, and I wanted to follow up with you, if that's okay. So you like to look to the future. Where do you think the industry itself is going?
Well, that's a crystal ball question where nobody really knows. You can sort of trace an arc from where we were, where we are now, to where we might be going. I think that we've, in some ways, we professionals in the industry have worked ourselves out of a job, because we opened things up and we gave out the secrets.
Gotcha.
And I am part of a generation which really broke Hollywood taboos by doing that.
Okay.
Sid Field, who preceded me by writing about the basic,
three act structure
concept, which not everybody buys, but it is sort of an industry standard. He was breaking a big taboo by doing that, because Hollywood always has the attitude, this is my sort of industrial knowledge, and we protect that, and we don't want the public to kind of know how we
trade secrets.
Right, trade secrets. So I was part of that and broke that, and now everybody kind of knows how the sausage is made, and they have a big urge to make it themselves.
Yeah.
So there's a democratization going on of handing over this. You can't own it anyway. Once Star Wars or Star Trek or something like that is out there, people make it their own. They write their own Harry Potters and their own versions of these things, and possess them with an intensity even greater sometimes than the original underlying material. So I think we'll see more along those lines, where it's easier for people to get in and make an impact. It's not such a narrow funnel to get into the business as it used to be.
Yeah, with streaming and all kinds of different kind of indie publishers out there now, they're definitely seeing a lot more films being made of really good quality within the indie market. Even
Right.
It's not the straight to video days anymore.
Right. Yeah, and I'm just noticing too. There's a pendulum always about tone, and we've gone to very dark tone, very much anti-hero exploration, but that always creates a vacuum on the other side. So things will swing back, and you'll get stories of innocence like Ted Lasso.
Yes. Oh my God. I totally agree with you. I think comedies are in the way back, because we've all just survived like a pandemic, right?
Right. We've had a very dramatic thing right on our doorstep, and all the social, disagreements about that are right in your face. So, entertainment becomes, sometimes it's a refuge, sometimes it's a medicine.
Yeah.
And I really believe that there are healing properties to these things. It's been great for just me personally and my wife during this time to find, although it's a struggle sometimes to find something and figure out, is it on Netflix or is it on Amazon? Did we watch that episode on Hulu?
Yeah.
You know, you're always scrambling to put it together and get ahead, you know, because you eat it up so fast.
Yep.
And that's the reality we're in right now. You know, it's very different from the days when I started, where, you know, it was Friday night, new movie comes out, and there was, you know, 1 or 2 shows to watch on TV, and that's it. But
That was it.
now it's a stream, but it's a challenge to edit that, weed through it, find things. There's an embarrassment of riches, and that's good.
I agree 100%. The Writer's Journey is on its 25th anniversary. You can find it, I'm assuming, anywhere books are sold, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And it is a staple. If you haven't read this book, you need to read this book. Chris Vogler, thank you so much for being on this show today. It's been a real honor.
Geoffrey, it's been great. Your questions are terrific, and good luck with your work.
Thank you.